Hello, American history. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good week and a good weekend. This is our last lesson for the year for American history. We have come a long way, beginning in the 1800s up until now, World War II. Today, this week, we will be talking about World War II and really just breaking it down. There's a lot to talk about, and so we don't have enough time to talk about everything and every detail about what happened. So what I'm doing is I'm summarizing a really 6-year war into a few minutes. So just take some notes along the way and come along for the journey. Well, World War II, how did it start? Well, how did, I thought World War I was supposed to end all world wars. Well, that was the hope and the ideal, but that was not the case. Events leading up to World War II were mainly countries the countries Italy, Japan, and Germany were invading countries and trying to rule over them. The leaders of these countries were Benito Mussolini of Italy, Hirohito, Emperor of Japan, and the Prime Minister was Hideki Tojo, and Adolf Hitler of Germany. Hitler wanted to bring Germany back up from when it lost to World War I. If you remember, at the end of World War I, Germany, all the blame was placed on Germany. It wasn't placed on anyone else. And so they took all the blame and the hit. And so they were, after World War I, very just depleted. There wasn't a lot going for Germany during that time. And so, in the 1930s, a man named Adolf Hitler wanted to bring Germany back to relevance, and not only that, to be a powerful country and a powerful empire. He believed Germans were the superior race, and so he wanted to make that known throughout Germany and in Europe. And he blamed the Jews for Germany's problems. He organized the Nazi Party, which was a National Socialist Party. Hitler became popular in Germany for his promises of bringing Germany back to relevance and to being powerful. So people bought in. He became the leader of Germany and the German chancellor and became a dictator. Germany began to grow in power under Hitler, and Italy and Japan, all three of those, Germany, Italy, Japan, became allies, and they became known as the Axis powers. Germany took over several countries that took over Czechoslovakia, Austria, Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, Yugoslavia, and Greece. Think about how many countries that is. And Germany would take them over. And while they were taking over these countries, Hitler persecuted the Jews. He did not like Jews. The term for his persecution we know is the Holocaust, and what that means is slaughter or heavy execution, or it's also known as Shoah, which means catastrophe. This was the Holocaust was the killing of 6 million Jews. That's right, 6 million Jews. It is very dark and very, very depressing moment in our history. It was done by his Nazi group. Hitler would have living conditions uncomfortable for the Jews, and then he would have them thrown into ghettos where it was tight living spaces that were enclosed with high walls and barbed wire. And then later he sent them to concentration camps. And these camps were heavily guarded and were not pleasant, as far as not only the living conditions, but the where they lived, the actual place where they were. At these camps, they were treated as slave laborers. They would work all day doing different tasks at the camp. They were known as prisoners as well because they could not leave. They were forced to stay there. It was a prison camp. And they were awful. These camps were terrible. They had small living space, no heat in the winter. It gets very cold in Germany and in, the countries surrounding that. They had limited bathrooms and showers, and so they would have to huddle up and barely had water. And sometimes they wouldn't even have water. They would withhold the water from them, then they would have to be dirty. At certain points, they would have to strip they had to get rid of their own clothes and put on a uniform that was striped. They were humiliated with certain acts, and people were just humiliated in public. Disease grew and killed several people in the camp. They had their heads shaved. Those who did not work fast enough or failed in some area were tortured and punished. And there are even more details about what Hitler did to the Jews. You could definitely research that. It would be nice if we had more time to discuss what all happened, because it is just cruel and just inhumane acts of what was going on. But these are just a few things that went on at those concentration camps and the treatment of the Jews. Well, Britain and France, of the Allied powers, remember from World War I, they tried to defend Europe and themselves from Germany. France was eventually taken over. They could not withhold the attacks from Germany. Britain did what it could on its own and stood its ground through the leadership of Prime Minister Winston Churchill. America, while all this was going on, was not in the war. Remember, they did not want to be participating in wars. In fact, the reason they got in the one in the First World War was because Germany had sunk their ships and threatened to use Mexico to attack the United States. And so they had no choice but to join. And so as much as all this stuff was going on, America was neutral. They were not involved. Now, they did send aid to Britain, but they did not get involved in the war at this time. The U.S. did notice, though, that Japan was invading areas and getting close to U.S. territories, such as the Philippines. So it stopped trading with Japan and stopped economic relations with them. And tension began to grow between the U.S. and Japan. And Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto was the commander-in-chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet. So their carrier with all their planes and their navy, he was the one in charge of that, and he was the one with the idea of bombing Pearl Harbor. The Emperor Hirohito and Prime Minister Tojo Hideki gave the approval for the attack. So it was Yamamoto that came up with the idea, but the Emperor and the Prime Minister are the ones that gave the approval for the attack. On December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan. The United States of America had been attacked. Nothing like this had ever happened. It took place on a Sunday at 7:55 a.m. in the morning in Hawaii. Japan sunk and damaged 19 American ships, including the USS Arizona. It destroyed 200 planes, and more than 2,000 men were killed and more than 1,000 wounded. And this was just nothing that had ever taken place that someone had attacked America. And it was so unexpected as far as when it would happen. And there was a warning that there was a possibility that Japan would attack, but there was no way really knowing exactly when they would attack. It's just crazy. It was very depressing and just unexpected, and just people were just distraught and really scared and afraid of what happened. Well, on December 8th, the next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave a speech, and I'm going to read a little bit about that speech right now. He said, it was a speech after Pearl Harbor on December 8th. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. And so that's really the most famous, well-known sentence and statement of Franklin D. Roosevelt after Pearl Harbor had got bombed. He goes on really to say that he requests that Congress declare war and that they would be involved in the war. And I will have a clip for you of that exact recording. I believe that it's available of when he was spoken on the radio, and so I will try to have that for you, a link for that, so you can hear that. Well, Congress declared war on Japan, and the United States had now joined the war. They were a part of World War II now. After Pearl Harbor, millions of Americans joined in the war. They volunteered. They wanted to fight because their nation had been attacked, and they wanted to defend their nation. They wanted to protect their nation. And women even joined in the military as well. And like in World War I, they took over the workforce as several millions of men joined to fight for our country in World War II. Also just like in World War I, America mass-produced weapons and tanks and planes to fight in the war. They would use factories that would be able to make tons and tons of weapons. It actually helped America recover from the Great Depression. Remember, America was in the Great Depression before this, struggling, and this helped provide jobs and resources and really helped the economy in America. Well, President Roosevelt and Winston Churchill met and worked together to fight as allies in Europe. The commander for the U.S. in Europe was Dwight Eisenhower, and under General George Patton, America removed Germans from Italy, and then Italy overthrew Mussolini, their dictator, and Italy joined the Allied powers to fight against Germany. So just like in World War I, how they were on the axis, they were on the opposite side, they joined the Allied powers once again and wanted to fight against Germany. Eisenhower led Americans alongside Britain in Operation Overlord, also known as D-Day, in France to remove the Germans. In the famous Battle of the Bulge, America pushed Germans back to Germany. This would be a huge victory, and it would eventually cause Germany to quit fighting. After that, Hitler knew that there was no way he could win, and he took his own life. After the fighting in Europe was basically over, America was starting to focus on Japan and the Pacific. Now, it wasn't like they just went to Europe and said, we'll take care of the Pacific later. No, they were doing both of those, but they were trying to balance out their men and their resources. And so that was the fighting in Europe. Now we're in the Pacific, as far as in between Hawaii and Japan and around Japan. America won some battles in the Pacific, won the battle at Midway to keep Japan from advancing, getting back to Hawaii and back to the United States. And with the command of General Douglas MacArthur, America was able to win some battles and continue to push the Japanese back to Japan. After more fighting, America was able to get to the Japanese mainland, where they were actually in Japan and fighting on their own soil. Under President Roosevelt, the Manhattan Project developed. And what it was the development and creation of the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb was developed and created in East Tennessee in a secret city that they made called Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And that's real interesting. In Tennessee history, I taught the sixth graders that last week, and so it was real interesting to learn about that. So Tennessee and Oak Ridge, that's where they made the atomic bomb. And then in Los Alamos, New Mexico, that is where they tested the atomic bomb. And Oak Ridge, Tennessee is still there today, and so you could visit there and learn about how they, made it, how they recruited people, how they kept it secret, and all the details of that. Well, President Roosevelt suddenly died of a stroke, and the next president of the United States became Harry Truman. And Harry Truman was a very big supporter of the atomic bomb. He thought it would be more beneficial to save American lives, as far as from them fighting, by using a bomb to send a message to Japan and to end the war. President Truman gave Japan a formal warning that they should surrender or face total destruction. He didn't say how, but total destruction. That's a good warning. Japan refused, and on August 6, 1945, at 8:15 in the morning, the Enola Gay airplane dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. The bomb was nicknamed Little Boy. So there was one atomic bomb. The bomb has been dropped and sent a message to Japan. Well, 3 days later, Japan gets another warning. All right, you saw that what we did, you need to surrender. They refused, okay? So then the U.S. dropped another bomb called Fat Man on Nagasaki. And the next day after that, Japan surrendered. And on August 14th, 1945, Japan had surrendered and World War II was over. Woo! Everybody was cheering and excited and glad World War II was over. This long war was finally over after so much, death and so much just cruelty and just so much was going on. It was such a celebration to end this war. World War II was the deadliest war in world history. 70 to 85 million people died as a result of this war. World War II is the second in American history of deaths, number one being the Civil War. So World War II, a lot happened in it, and like I said, I wish we could have had more time together in the classroom to discuss more about it, but here is just a summary of what all happened in World War II. And like I said, there's plenty of other stuff. You could look up stuff in books, or whether you check some good credited websites on the internet of, the Holocaust or the Pearl Harbor or the atomic bomb or the fighting in Europe or in Japan. There's just tons of things you could look up and read and learn about World War II. But here is just a small summary of what happened. Your assignment for this week is to answer questions from this video, or answer questions from the material in this video, and you just, use the notes that you have collected and answer the questions, and then submit it by this Friday, 5 o'clock, this Friday at 5 o'clock. This is your last assignment for the semester. And I want to tell you, I enjoyed teaching you this year. I had a good time teaching you American history. I hope you enjoyed learning about it. We learned about a lot of different things. I wish we could have learned more. But thank you for your hard work, especially for your cooperation and hard work during this unique time in this last 9 weeks through online learning. Thank you, parents. Thank you, students, for your hard work and for your adjustment in this. So, but like I said, I enjoyed teaching you, and I hope you enjoyed learning, and I hope you have a good summer.